Talks in Washington have apparently broken down over a fix for sequestration and the impending fiscal slope that could occur at the first of the new year. On Thursday, U.S. Speaker of the House John Boehner pulled his deficit reduction bill because he did not have the caucus support to bring it to a floor vote. Without an agreement on a new plan, automatic tax increases and across-the-board federal spending cuts will kick in, affecting the federal government and states. I spoke with Jonathan Willner, professor of economics at Oklahoma City University's Meinder School of Business, about the fiscal slope and what the impasse in Washington means for Oklahoma. Jonathan, where is the national deficit?
Right now, it's about $1.3 trillion, or about 8 or 9% of GDP. These numbers actually move around depending on tax revenues and things like that, and how fast the economy grows. So those are just rough numbers. The exact number changes moment by moment.
From an economic standpoint, why is that a problem?
Well, the major issue in the short run has to do with the effect this has on interest rates for private industry and, to a certain extent, consumers. So when the government borrows money, it crowds out, it's our word for it in economics, private investment, if that was going to occur, and it raises the interest rates to private investment. So it can slow down the private economy in that regard when you borrow heavily. Right now, I don't see that as much of a problem because we have very low interest rates. The banks have over $1 trillion that they could lend if they chose to, but for one reason or another, either desire to borrow or willingness to lend, that lending isn't happening. So the idea that crowding out is an issue at the moment doesn't seem to actually exist.
There's been a lot of talk about the federal government going over the fiscal cliff. It's really not a cliff, though. It's a slope.
Yeah, and the first couple of weeks of it are going to be very, very gentle, if you will, because if you think about somebody who's paid, say, every 2 weeks, then the tax effect that those people will feel won't actually show up until mid-January or so when they actually have to start paying those taxes. If you're on monthly, it's going to be at least a month before it shows up on taxes. The same thing is going to be true of spending. It's going to be a 10% reduction during the year, but there's a good chance that most firms who receive government money would simply assume that, well, they'll get it straightened out, and so they won't actually curtail their expenditures immediately.
If the government heads down that fiscal slope, taxes will go up on everyone.
Yes.
And what will that do to the economy?
Well, that depends on who you're looking at. Some estimates are to hit the average family at about $3,500. But as our income distribution is skewed, so will that mean effect be skewed. So people under $100,000 a year income or families, we're not talking about major league effects right away. Also, this is spread over a year. So if you just took that $3,500, spread it over 12 months, you're really only looking at $300 a month per household. So it's not that big a whack early on. Over time, yes, this will have an effect.
Concerns have been expressed that if taxes go up, it will cost the United States hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Over time, it may in fact do that. A lot of this has to do with how an economy adjusts. Right now, we have relatively high unemployment, low economic activity. Raising taxes at this point, if it hits people who are actually going to spend it, well, that's going to reduce consumption. That will slow the economy. But where we're looking at is at the upper ends of this income, those folks aren't going to spend that money anyway. Right now, they're mostly putting it in the stock market, which has very little impact on the real economy. Most of that is just trading, current activity. So there's not going to be a direct big effect from the taxes. There's more likely to be a direct big effect from the reduction in expenditures if that goes through.
If federal spending is cut across the board, what will that do to states, especially Oklahoma?
Well, Oklahoma is a net recipient of federal money, so it's going to be a little harder in Oklahoma and other states that are net recipients. What we're looking at is a build down in our major air bases. It's going to be, and military bases. It's also going to come through less highway activity. Lots of these things that are federally funded will be reduced. And since we're a net recipient of federal aid, it's going to hit us a little harder than it's going to hit a state that's a net payer.
All right, when you say net recipient versus net payer, explain the difference.
Well, the federal government collects money through taxes, et cetera, from everybody in every state. So you add up the amount of money that leaves the state for the federal coffers, and then you look at the amount of money that comes in from the federal coffers. The amount of money that comes in from the federal government to Oklahoma greatly exceeds the amount that people and companies in Oklahoma send to the federal government. So we're a net recipient of federal money.
So the state of Oklahoma receives more federal money than it sends away.
Yes.
In taxes. That's the bottom line. As you take a look at what could happen if the federal government goes down that slope, long term, does it lead to a recession?
Well, assuming the fiscal cliff, so-called fiscal cliff actually occurs, then yeah, we're looking at a recession. You've got increased taxes, that slows an economy, decrease in government spending, that slows an economy. The big question is going to be, how rapidly do things adjust? The idea of all of this is if you get the government out of the economy, which would be the decrease in spending, then private industry will expand and take up the slack. If that happens rapidly, then we don't have a recession. If it doesn't adjust rapidly, then we do have a recession.
Jonathan Willner, Oklahoma City University Meinder School of Business, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.